Well, good evening. I want to welcome you to the broadcast. My name is John Mayfield, and get my microphone settled here. We should be good to go. So thank you for joining the webinar. Actually, I want to put this camera on here. So thanks for joining. And hopefully it looks like we're broadcasting loud and clear. So we're going to get started here in just a moment. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate all of your business, appreciate all the students. And anytime you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Now, I did have a few folks. My email, unfortunately, was down for several days, and I had no idea. In fact, I told my daughter, Allie, who helps me, I said, wow, things are going so great. We haven't had anybody with questions. It's like we'd made a few changes to the course, and lo and behold, I checked my email. I was out of town at a conference, and for some strange reason, I had received an email from a friend, Brian. I don't know if you're on or not, Brian, but Brian said, I sent you a couple of emails and you didn't respond. And my heart sunk, because I'm always conscientious about getting back with my students. I mean, I get emails at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night and on weekends, and I'm always getting back. And so Brian told me that, and I thought, what's going on? And I looked back, and I had some emails from some of you who I had not responded to, and I just felt awful. So we have that fixed. I have no idea how that happened. Everything was set up, and I guess the computer gremlins somehow got in and took that offline. I really think that what happened was GoDaddy had some type of a loss in their system, and when they restored everything, they went back in time, and or somehow my email got deleted or corrupted. But we have it fixed, and my daughter and I put a couple of safety measures in so that doesn't happen again. But anytime if you reach out to me and you do not hear back from me within one day, please call me on the phone number, because I definitely want to take care of any issues or problems you have. So anyway, my apologies about that, but thanks for joining. We want to get into some of the material here. So still trying to get some of the lighting worked here in our studio, but we're going to be fine. And I'm going to kind of throw on my my iPad here on the other screen. So in fact, I'm going to do that right now. It should be up over here. Let's see if I can find that. I might have to restream that. Let's see if I take that off, and I'll just put it back on here. Technology, sometimes you have some crazy things go on, but we should be able to get back up here shortly. I do not see anything going over there yet, so hopefully we'll be able to do that. A couple of things I did want to talk to you about while we're waiting on this. Tonight I want to talk a little bit about agency. I don't have to put this up. This is in your, and I'm just going to stream over here to my computer so we can see this very quickly here. Couple of things I want to mention and make sure everybody's aware of. Regardless of what course you are in, whether you're Kansas, South Dakota, Missouri, Oklahoma, all of you have in your dashboard what is called the review modules. And the easiest way to get to that is up here in the top left corner, very top. Don't worry about this roll down here. Go up here to the top left corner where it says the home button. If you scroll down, you all will have what are called the review modules. Now, the review modules actually allow you to look at any of the chapters, and they are unlocked. So for example, I'm going to go into Review Module 4, and I'm just going to click Resume. It will bring me to the module, but if you'll notice, I can actually drop down and go anywhere in the course that I want to go. So I had a I had a student today who's just finished the course. He's wanting to go back into review, and he called me up and he said, I went into the review modules, but it looks like I'm going to have to go through that whole module again. And I told him, I said, no. The review modules are unlocked, so you can jump around anywhere you want to within the review modules. Now, in order to get your real estate license, you're going through an online course. The real estate commissions in every state want to make certain that you are not fast tracking. In other words, they don't want you to go to, I'll just show you here, they don't want you to start here on the first slide and then just scroll all the way down and hit the congratulations, you're done button. That's not going to work for the real estate commission. They want to make sure that you go through each slide. And most of you understand who've been going through the course that I speak on some of the slides. Now, if you don't want to hear my voice on the slides, it's no big deal. Just hit the mute button and you can read the information. But I try to give you commentary and information on each slide. Some of the slides I don't provide information, and I've had students that have asked me, I wish you would explain each slide, and I'll be happy to do that. In fact, we're working on that now. But I do want you to understand that anytime you want to go back into review, you just go into the review modules. So I'm actually working on a tips book right now on tips for passing the real estate exam. And one of my tips while you're in the course that I'm providing for students is that I really believe what I would do if I was in the online courses, I would go through 1, 2, 3, or 4 modules, and then I would go back and review those 4 modules a second time before I went on to 5 and 6. Then I would go back and review 1 through 6, maybe not every piece of the chapter, but just go through and review or review your notes. So in other words, as you go through the course, you need to be going back through and going through the review modules. Now, you also have practice exams, and let me show you those right now. So I'm going to select the exit button. If I go up here to the home button, I can go down and I can look for practice exams. Now, everyone has the practice exams. When you select continue this course, there's one thing you need to do is instead of selecting resume, just select restart, okay? Now, why do you select restart? That flushes all of your owed answers out of the system, and it allows you to retake any questions you want. One of my other tips for the tips book that I'm doing while you're in the school is to take questions over and over and over again. Trust me, you're going to see questions that I have in my course that will be similar to the questions on the exam, and they will help you for the exam. In fact, in the practice exams, that's where I'm adding new questions all the time. And so you will have questions in the practice exams that you do not have in your regular material. Many of them will be the same, and that's okay. We want to go through those as often as we can. But I just want you to be aware, you have review modules, you have practice exams you can go through. And one last thing I will show you is that when I'm going to exit out of this, and remember, go up to the home button, very top corner. Down here where I have what are called study sessions. These are recorded sessions. All of these are as if I were in the school room teaching to you. Now, one little disclaimer I will tell you. Oklahoma and South Dakota Oklahoma requires 90 hours of classroom time. South Dakota requires 110 hours of classroom time. Missouri, 48. Kansas is just 30. So I'm not requiring the Missouri and the Kansas students to watch those sessions, but they are there for you to watch if you want to. And it's as if I'm teaching you the material that we're going to go over tonight. Same way I'm going to teach this tonight is what I'm doing on those sessions. And the pass rates have been very, very high in those states. And I actually told my wife, I said, I think I need to make some of the other states probably. I really need to encourage you to watch those because I think it just helps. You go through the online portion and then you watch me teach as if I'm in the classroom. I just think it's very beneficial and helpful that way. So you have the study sessions, and let's go on down. Look here, I have all of my past recorded study sessions right there, and I've got a couple more I need to add that I will do tonight, and I will even add tonight's study session right there as well. So lots of things that you have. Don't forget, if you go out to Podbean or iTunes, soon to be on Spotify, and we're working on that as well. Spotify actually requires me to put them in an MP3 format, and iTunes and Podbean and some of the other podcasting platforms that I go to do not require that. So I want to go to my podcast. There we go. So if you just search for Global Real Estate School, and by the way, I talk about this in my technology classes. I mean, my numbers are off the chart for downloads. I had 181 downloads yesterday, 34,000, and I've only had this podcast up for like a year or so. So there's a lot of really good podcasts. But here you go. I did one this week. This was a student told me they just saw a question. I'm not supposed to say that. They asked me about this question, that what do you call a toxic real estate site? And so I talk about that. So you're going to find lots of really good podcasts here that you can listen to in your car while you're walking. And in fact, I actually have, believe it or not, every one of my study sessions, as if I was teaching the class, I stripped the audio out, put that on iTunes and Podbean, so you can listen to the entire course right from iTunes in an audio version. Okay, we are ready to get started. Let me see if I can send this over. If not, I may have to restart I may need to restart this. Here we go. So hopefully we will be up and rolling. There we go. Good. All right. So we're going to get started here. And by the way, this the entire book is available for you to download. If you want to download the book, it is available for you to download in the course dashboard. I'll show you where that's at a little bit later. And as you go into the modules, each chapter is available to download and print out, and the resources tab. I'll show you that as well. But some people may want to print the entire book from the very beginning. Some people may want to just print out chapters. Now, here's a really cool thing about the course, I think. I have to print the book out. Every slide corresponds with the book. And if you take good notes, you go through the course, I think it works just as well, if not better, than trying to highlight. In fact, one of my other tips for my tips book is highlight or handwrite. You do handwritten notes, and overwhelmingly, the research shows that if you handwrite notes, you'll do a much better job in retaining and learning the information than you will printing out a book and highlighting. However, some people may want to print the book out, and as they go through the course, highlight, take notes, because I do give a lot of information as we go through. So whatever you want to do is fine, but I'll show you where those are at. And we're going to just kind of try to go through chapter 10 and 11. We'll see how quick it goes tonight. But one of the things you need to know for the real estate exam is this whole concept called agency. It's very, very important. A lot of people will tell you that you will go through real estate school and you'll know a lot of this information in the real world. The answer is that's not correct. Now, agency changes from state to state. Okay, right We have students online in South Dakota who are watching tonight. We have students in Kansas. We have students in Oklahoma and students in Missouri. Soon to hopefully have students in Indiana and Pennsylvania, Florida, and Hawaii that'll be watching with us. But every state has a different agency law. And so, for example, in Florida, you could not be what is called a dual agent, okay? In Missouri, we allow disclosed dual agency. What I want, and we cover all of this in your course in the state material. So tonight I just want to do a general, broad agency explanation that you need to know for the national exam, okay? There will be some questions regarding agency as it applies to your state, but for tonight, let's just kind of talk about agency in a broad general terms, because you'll see some questions from 10 and 11, chapters 10 and 11. You'll see a lot of questions from that. So what do we talk about? What do we mean when we talk about agency? One of the things we need to understand in the typical, I'm going to go back if we could. I got my real estate license in 1978 at the age of 18, and I'm going to take you back to the way that real estate was transacted back then. Not that it was any different, but it's just the way that it was transacted. So in this example, we had a real estate broker. When I used to teach this at my office in live events, I used to have fun with this little piece here. And I'd always put a cigar coming out of the real estate broker's mouth, but we won't do that tonight. And so let's just come over here and let's just put this couple, and we're going to call them the sellers, okay? They're the owners of the property. Now, the real estate broker, we're going to find out that the sellers, they want to sell their property, and so they contact the real estate broker and they hire the real estate broker through a listing agency contract, okay? It is a contract. Now, when they enter into this listing agency contract, the sellers now become what are called the client. They can also be called the principal. Okay? And the broker is referred to as the agent. Now going back in the early 1980s, late 70s, we had buyers over here. So I'm going to put a buyer here, or we'll put two of them. And they wanted to buy, they're interested in looking at this home. Well, who do they normally call? They normally call, back then, because we didn't have the internet, right? They'd either call or they'd stop in our office and they would say to the broker, hey, we want to look at this house. In fact, let's just further complicate it a little bit. They call this person who's the salesperson working floor duty. Now, this salesperson is an agent for the broker, okay? So the buyer calls the salesperson, the agent. They want to look at this house, and all along, who does the buyer believe the agent is working for? Well, they think it's their agent. I mean, let's go. They would call and they would say, hey, I want to look at this property and I want to make sure that I'm broadcasting live because I think I may have lost a video output. I had this on no notifications and I apologize, so let me just put it back on here and we'll see if we're still going live. So I think I'm back here. I'm going to have to take off these two and put them right back on, and I apologize about that. So hopefully we'll have our screen back up here in just a second. Let me go back over here. I had a phone call come in and I just noticed that. So if we got hung up there, I apologize. Okay, so I think we're back up and running, and hopefully, and I'm just going to see if I can. I had that on notifications to stop that from coming in, but I apologize about that. I think we're good to go, so I'll just see how that works here. Let's see. I'm not getting any movement on that, but I see the other slides are doing okay. Well, we'll come back here and hopefully things are doing fine. Live technology. I use a really cool program called Switcher Studio, and I have to turn all the notifications off, but if someone tries to call in, it just does really weird things to the system. And for some unknown reason, it went right past the notifications, and I think I know why. It was my daughter, and when I have notifications on, it allows family members to still contact or call through. So going back to this, I wanted to explain what was going on, and I don't know exactly when that went off the air. So sellers sign a listing agency contract with the broker. That forms an agency. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute. The buyers out here call the salesperson who works for the broker, wants to look at the property, and my question was, who do the buyers think is their agent? And they think it's the salesperson. But what happened back here, and I probably need to get a different colored marker, is when this was signed, this created what is called an agency, right? And along with an agency comes these fiduciary obligations, which is care, obedience, accountability, loyalty, and disclosure. Okay, and we'll talk about those in just a second. Now, the agent and the broker have the same fiduciary obligation. Okay, so the agent owes the same fiduciary obligation to his broker, and guess what? Because the agent works for the broker, the agent is then a sub-agent for the seller, which requires the same fiduciary obligations. So who's the buyer over here? This is going back in the old days. The buyer is what we call a third party, okay? And you just have to be, honest to them. And there's a question in your material. We'll go through that here in a little bit. Take a look at that question so we can, in fact, that might be kind of fun to go through chapter 10 questions after we go through this. But you do not owe the buyers care. You do not owe the buyers obedience, accounting, loyalty, disclosure. So if the buyer tells the agent, well, we really like the house, we'll pay full price for it, but let's try to buy it for less money. See if they'll take $95,000, but we'll pay $100,000. Well, the agent is supposed to tell what to the sellers or the broker who listed the house. Hey, they are offering $95,000, but they told me they'd pay $100,000. Why is the agent supposed to say that? Because they owe a fiduciary obligation to the sellers, their client, which is care, obedience, accounting, loyalty. That would fall in that scenario, wouldn't it? And disclosure. But the buyer doesn't know that, or didn't know that back then. So what came about in the late 1980s is a thing we call buyer's agency. So buyers or real estate agents would go to buyers and say, I'll be your agent and I'll give you all these fiduciary obligations. And guess what? I'll go collect my fee from the seller. Well, now there's a big lawsuit through the National Association of Realtors from this big legal firm who is suing. It's a class action lawsuit. And they're saying, sellers are saying, well, why should we have to pay the buyer's agent their fee when they weren't working for us? And that's very complicated. And I can explain why that is important, hopefully, by the end of this lesson. So that was kind of back then, okay? So let me just kind of erase some of this and let's go back through it again, all right? And I'm going to just kind of, it's good to see this a couple of times because this is where they really ask the more the questions where you have to apply the topic to the subject matter. So let's just take you are a salesperson, okay? And you go out to John and Carrie's, my wife and I, to our house, and you want to list our home for sale, okay? We sign the listing agreement, and now there's this listing contract that we signed, and once we sign that, we've now have entered into a legally binding contract with the broker. Okay, we're going to talk about that here. But because we signed this, we now have this what's called a fiduciary obligation. And I like the acronym COLD, C-O-A-L-D, and I'll go through those here in a second. And so this couple of things about this, when you sign the listing agreement, when a contract's been signed, you have this F-I-D-U-C-A-R-Y, I'm a creative speller. I'm wanting to think there's another I in there, but I-A-R-Y, but we'll look at that here in a second. I probably have that right here. And I could tell you, F-I-D-U-C-I-A-R-Y. I thought there was another I in there. The joys of live TV. That's why I had to get out of being in broadcasting. You know, if I was the weatherman, I was always worried. I was a major in broadcasting and film, but I was always worried two things. I was always worried that I would have names that would be hard to pronounce. And the second thing was that I might read a news story that would be kind of, it would be tragic to some people, and I might get a smile on my face or something. And anyway, we won't talk about that. I'm trying to have fun tonight, so you can have fun in class. You're sitting there trying to learn this, right? So anyway, that's why I'm in real estate and not broadcasting. But I can do this now from my basement and have fun with it. So it's a fiduciary obligation. It creates care. A fiduciary obligation is just an acronym to remember that it's care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, disclosure. Now, here's a couple of questions on the exam. Who does the salesperson work for? Who do you work for? You work for the broker, don't you? Now, the salesperson is the one who knows John and Carrie, and they get the listing agreement for the broker, but the listing is actually between the broker and the seller. That will be a question on the exam. Now, I saw a question recently someone had written, and it really sounded like that seller, the salesperson, should be able to take their listing with them. In other words, you will have a question on the test that says, salesperson John is best friends with Julie and Mark. John was in their wedding. They've been doing things together since they were young kids. Julie and Mark think the world of John. I mean, they'll just paint this really rosy picture, okay? 2 days after Julie and John list their house, Julie and Mark list their house with John. John gets mad at the broker and leaves. Doesn't want to work there anymore. Can Julie and Mark get out of their listing agreement? No. Okay? Now the question is worded in such a manner that you really feel sorry for John and you want to say, yeah, John can take that listing with him. But the answer is no. Why? Because listings are between the broker and the seller. Okay? So even though the salesperson goes out and initiates, has the seller sign the listing agreement, understand and know it's between the broker and the seller. Okay, that's a test question you're going to have. So you have 99 more to get right. Okay, trust me, you'll see that question. Now, they also, in an applied way, here's how they ask that question in an applied way. You're going to find out in a little bit how you can terminate an agency agreement. So they may say that a listing agreement between the seller and the broker can be terminated in which of the following ways, and they're going to say the salesperson does, and they'll use one of these fancy words that we'll have here in a minute. But you took my online streaming class tonight, and you know that John said, we just lost our, well, no, we're fine on that, but John said listings are between who? The broker and the salesperson. So don't feel sorry for the salesperson, as much as they may paint the picture that the salesperson and the sellers are such great friends, and John didn't like his broker and left a day later. Can he take his listing with him? No. Can Mark and Julie get out of the listing contract? No. That listing is between the broker and the seller. Okay, so you're going to get that question right. Don't even think any other terms on that. So here, the salesperson has a fiduciary obligation with their broker and with the seller, right? Okay, so we know that. Now, the buyer comes along, and try to do this here in black. So the buyer comes along, and they are going to either be represented by a buyer's agent, or they will have no representation. In Missouri, we call, the buyer would have no representation. We would disclose to them that we're working for the seller, and so the buyer's just really has nobody there to represent them. Now, this is another thing you need to understand. This person becomes a buyer's agent through a signed buyer's agency agreement, and that creates, when that's signed, then that creates that fiduciary obligation here as well. Okay? A buyer's agency contract and a listing agency contract are virtually the same. They're agency agreements. This buyer's agency contract, again, would be between this person's broker and the buyer. So a salesperson's, even though you're getting the listing signed, even though you're getting the buyer's agreement signed, you have to understand that contract is actually between your broker and the buyer or the seller. Now, for me as a broker, I have to give my agents authorization that they can sign for me on the listing contract, that it's okay for them to take a listing in my name and sign my name to the contract. The The other option of that would be I would have to sign every contract that comes in from my agents, but it's just easier for me to give them authorization so that listing's valid when they go out and sign that contract. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's think about this scenario here, and let me just kind of draw a couple of things for you here. Let's talk about, I think we can do that right here. Let's talk about care. Or I want to talk about cold, but we want to talk about care first, okay? Well, I was doing that correctly. I was going to go down here. So COALD. All right, so care. What do we mean by care? And I'll get back out of the way so you can see that over there. You owe due care when you go out to take a listing agreement. And I'm going to try to put this back up here for you so you can see that. When we talk about care, we're talking about, and I'm going to put this up on the board here, the fact that when you go out to get the room measurements, or you, and here we go, you can see it right here. It'll come up on your screen. Let me put this up here for you. I upgraded to Reflector 3, and for some reason it is so slow, but Reflector 2 was always in real time. It would just work so good there. You can see here, COALD, and the word care means the real estate agent owes due care to the principal while transacting business for the principal, the client. Now, I give you some examples here. Would be getting the information for the listing agreement in a professional and thorough manner. You know, sometimes I get tickled out of people that say, well, there's some trick questions on the real estate test. And yeah, there are. Now, the testing agency won't tell you they're trick, but to me, it's a very good example of how you have to use due care when you're working with clients. If you read that question too quickly and you miss it, maybe you're not ready to get your real estate license, you know? I mean, after all, we are handling one of the biggest financial investments most people will ever make in their life. And so, yes, we need to double check the taxes. We need to double check the zoning. We need to find out if the septic tank or how deep the well is. There's lots of things we need to do as real estate professionals. We need to run a CMA if we're working as a buyer's agent. Remember, you owe care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, disclosure. If you're a buyer's agent, you ought to take the time to find out, are they paying too much for that house, or is that a good investment for them? So you can see there that care is really following through in a professional and thorough manner. Now, the broker should possess the skill and knowledge regarding the real estate business to implement the issue of care. Very, very important there. Now, O stands for obedience, and I'm just going to abbreviate that, and we'll go right back to the screen here and see. But you can see obedience is a broker shall be obedient to all legal, and that's very important there. In fact, I've seen some questions where the broker wanted you to do something that was illegal, like not sell to someone of a specific race because they didn't want someone of a specific race buying their home. What should you do? You should turn the list, turn away the listing, don't take it, because you can only be obedient to legal instructions. If they want you to hold an open house, if they want you to do certain things, you need to be obedient and do that. Now, you also need to be accounting, the A for accounting. And when we talk about accounting, we come in contact with clients very personal information, sometimes keys to their house, sometimes photographs they've given us, sometimes plats or maps. We need to be conscientious and use due care to account for those records and make sure that we have those and that we do not lose those, and that they're always available for the client when that listing is up. You can see loyalty is the next for that. Loyalty. We need to be loyal to the principal only and no one else. Now, I can't tell you how many times, I just taught a negotiating class in Kansas City last week, and we were talking about negotiating. And, if I'm negotiating for my client, I want to get them the best deal I can. But you don't know how many times that I might be in a negotiating situation and I'll ask the other agent, why are they selling? Or, do you think they might come down a little bit on the price? And other agents, I'm not naming any names, sometimes will give me too much information. And I have to ask myself, are they being very loyal to their client? Their loyalties to their client, not to me or my client. And so, remember that when you take a listing agreement, you need to be loyal. Sometimes we're going to know that a person is about to lose their home.